Bridge Over Troubled Water, and from David Hunt, the Sex Pistols, Never Mind the Bollocks. Now, the draw was done by Richard himself, and he pulled out his first, so he got like the home tie. So, as in last week, the quarterfinals is the topic. It's all about the stories behind the songs and the album and how they how it come together. Now, as we know, up until 1970, very successful. And then things started to fall apart for them. The Bridge Over Troubled Water was actually their last album, but there is the story behind it now. Art Garfunkel took a role in the movie Catch-22, where he played Captain Nately. Initially, Paul Simon was to play a character of Dunbar, but the screenwriter Buck Henry felt that the film was already crowded with characters, and they wrote Simon's part out. Because of the long film production, it sort of endangered the relationship between the duo. Art later stated in an interview in 1990, "Our way of working was for Paul to write while we recorded, so we'd be in the studio for the best part of 2 months. But because of with the filming, they booked the time, and rather than waiting for Art, Paul wrote a bunch of songs, and I went off and did the movie." So there was this tension already, I suppose, because Paul Simon had been written out in the movie, and the filming took for Catch-22 took 8 months, and Paul had not completed any new songs at this point. The duo planned to collaborate when the film was finished. They created an experimental sound. They moved away from their typical folk and rock instead of exploring genres. And also, this was the first album that credited the musicians. So that was something different. One of them being Larry Ketchell, who played with Bread. So let's have a look. So let's have a look at Simon 1. Now, first track is Bridge Over Troubled Water. Now, Paul Simon started writing this and he wanted it to be a gospel sort of song. So he hired session musician Larry Ketchell, who was not part of Bread at the time. The song was initially about 2 verses, but Art felt the song was too short and asked Larry to play a 3rd verse, to which Simon would write some more lyrics. Horn section was added, and the song was actually titled like a Pitcher of Water, and they wrote Garfunkel's name as Garfunkel. So they returned to the studio in New York, and the inspirer for this was the vocal was Phil Spector's technique on Old Man River, the Righteous Brothers album song. So it took 2 months to finalise the Simon. Shall we start that bit again? It took him 2 months to sort that out, and he said and Paul Simon said it sounded too much like Let It Be, but hey ho. The song actually has been covered by loads of people, Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley. And there's a little bit in that song that refers to a Swan Silverstone song, Mary Don't You Whoop, the name of the title, which is inspired of a later line, I'll be your bridge over deep water in trust in my name. So that's where some of the lyrics came from. Okay, the second song is called El Conde Pasa, If I Could. Now this is a traditional Peruvian song, and it's a collection of little bits and bobs, and they had to get the copyright for this song. because it was written by Daniel Alma-Rabols and his son Armando. They got the royalties which they deserved. It's a really nice song. It uses panpipes, of course, and Paul Simon wrote the English lyrics to the instrumental track. So then, that was that one. So the next song on there was So Long, Frank Lloyd. Now this is a tribute to an architect called Frank Lloyd Wright, but also to Garfield, who wanted to train as an architect. So there's a lot of inspirations here. It's a lovely little song, and it's got Paul Simon plays a guitar style that he described as Latin jazz and bossa nova. I've missed one out, of course. Sorry. So they're also on side one. We've got Keep the Customer Satisfied. Now this, as Paul Simon said, is a song about keeping the customer satisfied. The exhausting tours that Paul Simon actually grew tired of, which is it's similar theme to that earlier song, Homeward Bound. Yes, Paul Simon never really liked touring, long tours. So that's side one. Sorry for missing that one out. So let's go to side two. So the first song on side two is The Boxer. Now it was a folk ballad when it was first written, and it was partly written in 1968, and it was released as a single in 1969. The session for this song was about 100 hours. The second and the main part of the recording was done in Nashville, and the strings were done at Columbia Studios. The song also features Simon and Fred Carter Jr. playing the guitars. The echoing drums was played by Blaine in the corridor, which is interesting. Charlie McCoy plays harmonica on it. A little bit of steel guitar from Peter Drake and a piccolo flute. And that was one of the Simon and Garfunkel did become one of the first musicians to use a 16-track recording in this. So, and it is a classic song now. Then we get that lovely up-tempo Baby Driver, personal favourite of mine. It was the B-side of The Boxer, and this story, and there's what they say. This tells the story about a boy who lives a comfortable life in a protected home, but searches more adventures, and one day decides to have his first sexual experience, and this is what it's all about. The recording features car noises and Beach Boys like singing in parts. Absurd thing. The song wasn't actually used. The title was used in Edgar Wright's film Baby Driver, and which of the song is played at the end. Then we have a lovely song, of course, The Only Living Boy in New York. This was wrote whilst Art was filming in Mexico, and it was a song about Paul Simon's isolation he felt in New York. Paul Simon says that there's about 12 to 15 voices on this one to record the ahas, while Garfunkel said he proposed those lines, stating it's around 8 times screaming and we mixed it down very softly. So the thing, and then Why Don't You Write to Me deals with the separation from Paul Simon's wife in a jungle. In this song, Paul Simon experimented with the genre of reggae for the first time, and he went on to do that with his solo career. So at the end of the last track is Bye Bye Love, and it was taken from a performance, their first concert after filming, and Bye Bye Love is Neville Brothers' song, and it's pretty good. So there's some really thing. And then we got the songs. The album's final song is "Song for Asking," which by this time they had become quite distant, and it's an olive branch. To be quite honest, it's to say, one day we'll do it, and they did. Of course, they did that reunion concert. So that there's other bits and bobs about this album, and I've got it up here somewhere. I did make a note of this if I can find it. Okay, there's another line from Bridge Over Troubled Water, and it's called "The Silver Girl." Now this actually refers to Paul Simon's wife Peggy, and it's a split about her first silver grey hairs coming, and not the drug hyperneeded needle that is believed by some in the United States. Yes. So there's another little story. So if you think the silver girl means a needle, it doesn't. It means Peggy's hair was going grey. I remember when I got my first grey hairs. It's not nice. I was only my first grey hairs appeared when I was in my late 40s. Anyway, there's a little bits of stories of how Bridge Over Troubled Water came to be. So good luck to that, Richard. Now he's up against David Hunt, and never mind the Bollocks. Here's the Sex Pistols. So there's not too much about this. I found that little bits. So it was their only proper full album. Glenn Matlock left halfway through. They brought in Sid Vicious, and there's some stories we can go on about that. But the first track, Pretty Vacant, was actually written in 1975 after a concert at Central St Martin's College of Art and Design. They had written 17, which closed their set. The next day, the group performed at Holborn's Central School of Art and debuted Pretty Vacant and Submission. And then on the 21st, they debuted New York. So they were writing songs as they were performing. So by 1970, the group had gained traction and debuted the song Problems for their second encore. So this material for the album was being written literally as they were playing it. And by April the 3rd of that year, No Feelings was being played, and Anarchy in UK first appeared in the 20th of July. So this was incredible. They were writing the album as they were going along, which is great. Typically rock and roll, isn't it? So on the 8th of October 1976, they were signed to EMI on a 2-year contract. So they recorded Anarchy in the UK and their new song God Save the Queen that was released in 76. But due to the nature of the material and the bad image, they were dropped by the label in 1977. So, also in 77, the founding member and original bassist Glenn Matlock quit, reportedly over the lyrics to God Save the Queen. And Matlock had co-written a majority of the album's tracks and was replaced by Sid Vicious. Close to completing a deal with A&M, they entered the studios again, and Sid Vicious played on Bodies and God Save the Queen, but his performing skills were not considered fit for the full album. So Malcolm McLaren tried to convince Glenn Matlock to perform the instrument on the sessions. Glenn agreed, but on the condition he was be paid forehand. When no payment was received, he refused to do it. So poor old Steve Jones had to do the bass and the guitar work because they didn't like what Sid was doing. There's another little story that goes this. Why they were recording this in another studio. Queen were recording as well. And apparently Sid went in to the studios and bit drunk, stumbled, and he said to Freddie Mercury, "Have you brought the ballad to the masses yet?" Freddie got up and responded, "Aren't you Simon Ferocious or something? And what you going to do about it?" Took him by the collar and threw him out. Later, the producer for Queen, Roy Thomas Baker, had a word with the Pistols engineer over the and said, "Can you tell him to stop interrupting?" And Johnny Rotten also went in and said, "Hello, Freddie," on all fours. And Roy just says, "Can you make sure this never happens again?" So there's some little stories there. So they were also, we were said there was that deal with A&M wasn't thing, but they didn't. So Virgin took up the thing, and but Richard Branson refused. He didn't like the idea of "God Save the Queen," but eventually got round to it, so it was released on Virgin. It's just, there was an album that took a little while to record. They kept going back into studios. Then we knew about the cover, how that come about, but it was a bit of a strain to get this album out. But they left us with these songs. But what I like about this, it's an album that was written while they were still, they'd write it one day and perform it the next. Interesting stories about this album and how they recorded it and wrote it. Fair play to Glenn, because he wrote most of these lyrics. He could. It's very good when you can write a song one day and put it in your set the next. Anyway, good luck, David, for this one. So, how do you vote for this? Well, as you know, we've got this new system now. Now, at the bottom in the description of this, there'll be the link to the vote, and it's one vote per person. It'll take us a little while to get used to this. By the time we get to the final, I think everybody will get used to it. It'll go. I'll put up a link in the live stream tonight, and if you go into the community tab, it'll be there from 2 o'clock. I'll also put a fresh one up on Monday, just after the weekend, just to remind you. You'll know you're at the right place, because as Dave's in charge, he's made a list. He's done some little bit of artwork, so you know you are on the right page, and you just put your vote. So, what is quarterfinal 3? Quarterfinal 3 next week. It's the dark horse of Battle Royale, the Colour of Spring Torp, up against the groundbreaking changing album from the Beatles, Revolver. I'm looking forward to that one. So good luck, chaps, and get voting from 2 p.m. today. You've got until midnight next Wednesday to get your vote in. So that's all for now. We'll be back very shortly with a pick and mix, and it is a producer this week. We haven't had one for a little while because I was poorly when this should have done. So it's Bruce Fairburn. So join me for that later. Bye for now.